In the seemingly idyllic suburbs of New Rochelle, New York, life appeared to unfold with predictable ease. Manicured lawns, friendly neighbors, and the promise of the American dream filled the air. It was a picture of post-war prosperity, where families thrived and futures seemed bright. The Abagnale family, at first glance, embodied this very ideal. They looked perfect, a shining example of suburban success. The father, a pillar of the community, was a respected businessman, known for his charm and charisma. The mother, a devoted homemaker, radiated warmth and love, creating a nurturing environment for her children. Together, they had 4 bright, energetic kids, each contributing to the family's seemingly perfect image. They were the envy of the neighborhood, a family that appeared to have it all. And at the heart of it all was Frank Jr., a charismatic and intelligent young man, full of potential and promise. He was the golden boy, the one destined for greatness. But beneath the carefully constructed facade of family dinners and smiling faces, a different reality was brewing. Tension and secrets simmered just below the surface, threatening to shatter the illusion of perfection. Cracks were beginning to appear in their seemingly flawless foundation. This hidden turmoil was teaching young Frank a harsh lesson early on, that appearances could be deceiving, and that the reality behind the smiles could be far more complex and painful. On his 16th birthday, a day that should have been filled with celebration and joy, everything collapsed. The carefully constructed world around him began to crumble like a house of cards. The first blow came with his parents' divorce, a bitter and acrimonious split that tore the family apart. This was quickly followed by his father's devastating business failures, leaving the family financially ruined and their reputation tarnished. And finally, the ultimate betrayal, his mother's infidelity, a secret that shattered Frank's perception of his family and the world around him. Forced to choose between his warring parents, Frank felt utterly abandoned and betrayed, caught in a web of deceit and heartbreak. He was alone, adrift in a sea of broken promises. Instead of picking a side in their messy divorce, he ran. He chose to escape the pain and confusion that had engulfed his life. He was rejecting the world that had lied to him, the world that had promised happiness and delivered only heartache. In a desperate act of defiance, he stole $3,400 from his father's failing business, a small sum that represented his last hope for freedom. With that money in his pocket, he impulsively drove to Manhattan, the glittering metropolis that promised anonymity and opportunity, determined to reinvent himself and leave his past behind. The city's chaotic energy and vibrant pulse became his blank canvas, a place where he could create a new identity, free from the constraints of his shattered past. Frank was ready to become anyone but the boy he'd left behind in New Rochelle, the boy who had been betrayed by his family and the world he knew. And so began his audacious masterpiece of deception, a daring game of cat and mouse that would captivate the world. Alone in the sprawling metropolis of New York, a young Frank Abagnale Jr. found himself adrift. The city, a beacon of opportunity for some, proved to be a harsh and unforgiving landscape for a runaway. He was just a boy, barely old enough to shave, trying to navigate a world that seemed determined to swallow him whole. The towering skyscrapers and bustling streets were a stark contrast to the security and comfort he had left behind. Frank quickly learned a harsh lesson. Youth was a liability. In the eyes of the city, he was just another runaway kid, easily dismissed and readily distrusted. No one was willing to give him a chance, no one willing to extend a helping hand. Every corner he turned, every person he approached met him with suspicion and indifference. He was invisible, a ghost in the machine of the city. But Frank was not one to be easily defeated. He kept his eyes open, always searching for an angle, a way to turn his situation around. One day, while observing the comings and goings at a bustling airport terminal, he noticed something that sparked an idea. He watched as Pan Am pilots, tall and confident, strode through the city, exuding an air of authority and respect. In that moment, a realization dawned upon him. People trust a uniform. It wasn't about who you were, but what you appeared to be. The uniform was a symbol, a shortcut to credibility and authority. It was a key that could unlock doors and open opportunities. He decided to become one of them, not a real pilot, of course, but the image of one. He would leverage the power of the uniform to his advantage. It was a bold and audacious plan, but Frank was desperate, and he was willing to try anything. He envisioned himself walking through airports, commanding attention and respect, all thanks to the carefully crafted illusion. To pull off this elaborate charade, Frank knew he needed information. Posing as a student writing a report, he charmed Pan Am's PR department, skillfully extracting insider information about the airline's operations and culture. He peppered them with questions, feigning innocent curiosity while carefully gathering the details he needed to build his persona. He needed to know where to acquire the perfect uniform, master the complex jargon of aviation, and understand the intricate ID procedures. Every detail mattered. Every piece of the puzzle had to fit perfectly. With his research complete, he confidently called the uniform supplier, convincingly claimed to be a pilot named Robert Black, spinning a tale of recent transfer and urgent need for a new uniform. Without hesitation, and with the stolen identity of Robert Black, he bought a custom uniform, ensuring it fit him perfectly and exuded the utmost professionalism. Forging a Pan Am ID was the final touch. With a vintage typewriter, a steady hand, and a carefully chosen model airplane decal, he meticulously completed his transformation, paying attention to every minute detail. Stepping into the crisp, tailored uniform, he was no longer a desperate teen, lost and alone. He was Captain Robert Black, a Pan Am pilot ready to take to the skies. Instantly, doors opened, smiles widened, and respect followed him like a shadow. People treated him differently, offering assistance and deference without question. Frank had discovered the intoxicating power of perception, the ability to manipulate reality with a carefully constructed facade. He wasn't just wearing a costume, playing dress-up. He was cloaked in credibility, shielded by the authority that the uniform projected. Now, with his new identity firmly in place, he was ready to test the limits, to see just how far this elaborate lie could take him, and what adventures awaited him in the skies and beyond. At JFK Airport, Frank's nerves were electric, but the uniform worked wonders. He blended in, nodding to real pilots, walking with purpose. His goal: travel for free. Learning about deadheading, he used his fake ID to hitch a ride to Miami in the cockpit jump seat. The real pilots accepted him as one of their own. That first flight was a rush, and just the beginning. For 2 years, Frank deadheaded on over 250 flights, visiting 26 countries, living a life of luxury and adventure, hotels, meals, and even cashing fake payroll checks, all perks of his pilot persona. Sometimes he earned more than real pilots. Frank had turned perception into profit, outsmarting the system at every turn. The Pilot Act gave Frank access, but check fraud made him rich. He exploited the slow banking system, depositing fake checks and withdrawing cash before they bounced. He opened accounts under aliases, printed counterfeit checks on stolen hotel stationery, and even made fake deposit slips that funneled strangers' money into his own accounts. Banks were left baffled and broke. He stole an estimated $2.5 million, an astronomical sum for the time. Even Pan Am payroll checks weren't safe. His uniform lulled tellers into trust. Frank was a ghost in the financial system, always one step ahead. His name became legend among law enforcement. After a close call at an airport, Frank needed a new disguise. In Georgia, a small lie on a rental form, doctor, spiraled into a full-blown impersonation. He forged a Columbia medical degree and became Dr. Frank Connors, supervising interns at Atlanta Memorial. He survived by delegating, never performing procedures, and mimicking TV doctors. For 11 months, no one questioned him. But one night, a baby in crisis exposed his ignorance. Paralyzed, Frank realized he was endangering lives. Horrified, he vanished overnight, leaving Dr. Connors behind. The thrill of deception had crossed a line. Frank knew he couldn't keep running forever. Fleeing Georgia, Frank set his sights on law. Louisiana allowed bar exam candidates without a law degree, his opening. He forged a Harvard transcript and crammed for weeks, passing the bar on his third try at just 19. Hired by the Attorney General's office, he fetched coffee and wrote briefs, always dodging real legal work. But a Harvard grad colleague grew suspicious, asking questions Frank couldn't answer. Sensing exposure, Frank disappeared once again. Another identity abandoned, another narrow escape. The law had been fooled, but only for a moment. Frank was running out of places to hide. By now, Frank had transformed into an international phantom, a whisper in the wind, a ghost in the machine. He moved with an uncanny ability to blend in, to disappear, leaving a trail of bewildered authorities in his wake. His exploits had become legendary, whispered in hushed tones among law enforcement agencies across the globe. The initial wave of chaos and deception had originated in the US, a series of audacious acts that left the American authorities reeling, struggling to comprehend the scope and audacity of his crimes. The ripple effects of his actions were felt far and wide, shaking the very foundations of trust and security. But his ambition knew no borders, and soon his escapades extended to Europe, where he continued his elaborate game of cat and mouse, leaving a similar trail of confusion and frustration in his wake. The continent buzzed with rumors and speculation about the elusive con artist. Recognizing the severity of the situation, the FBI assigned Agent Carl Hanratty to the case, a seasoned veteran known for his sharp intellect and unwavering dedication. He was the man they called when all other leads went cold. Hanratty was a dogged, methodical pursuer, a man who meticulously analyzed every detail, leaving no stone unturned in his relentless pursuit of justice. He possessed an uncanny ability to connect seemingly disparate pieces of information, forming a clear picture of his target. With painstaking effort, Hanratty pieced together Frank's trail, meticulously charting his movements, analyzing his methods, and gradually gaining a deeper understanding of the man he was chasing. Each clue was a breadcrumb leading him closer to his elusive prey. The portrait that emerged was that of a charming young man, a master of disguise and deception, always just out of reach, a step ahead of the law. He was a chameleon, adapting to his surroundings with remarkable ease, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and shattered illusions. Adding insult to injury, Frank taunted him with postcards from exotic places, flaunting his freedom and mocking Hanratty's efforts. Each postcard was a calculated jab, a reminder of the distance between them. He reveled in the chase, turning it into a personal game, a high-stakes contest of wits between hunter and prey. The game became an obsession for both men, blurring the lines between professional duty and personal vendetta. For years, Hanratty was always a step behind, constantly playing catch-up, his frustration mounting with each near miss. The elusive Frank seemed to anticipate his every move, always managing to slip through his fingers. But in 1969, a crucial tip, a whisper in the right ear, led police directly to Frank's location in France. The net was closing in. His audacious run finally ended with an arrest during a failed bank heist, a desperate attempt to maintain his lavish lifestyle. The game was over. When asked why he did it, why he risked everything, Frank's answer was surprisingly simple, almost childlike in its honesty. I was hungry, a stark admission that belied the complexity of his motivations. Beneath the carefully constructed legend, the elaborate facade, he was still a lost, desperate boy, yearning for something he couldn't quite grasp. The weight of his actions finally catching up to him. The chase was over, the game concluded, but the story was far from finished. The consequences of his actions were just beginning to unfold. Frank's next chapter, the one that followed his capture, would be his most unexpected, a twist in the narrative that no one could have predicted. Frank's capture led to harsh prison time in France, Sweden, and finally the US. In federal prison, the FBI saw value in his criminal expertise. They offered him a deal early release in exchange for helping them fight fraud. Frank agreed, trading his cell for a desk at the FBI Academy. He trained agents, exposed flaws in security, and designed safer checks. The poacher had become the gamekeeper. His insight saved billions, transforming him from liability to asset. Frank's criminal mind was now a weapon for justice. It was a twist no one saw coming. Redemption, it seemed, was possible, even for a master con artist. Freed and reformed, Frank built a new life as a security consultant, helping banks outsmart fraudsters. His memoir, Catch Me If You Can, became a bestseller and a hit Spielberg film, turning him into a legend. But in 2020, Frank admitted much of the story was fiction. Was he still conning us, even now? Today he's a respected expert and family man, but his story blurs the line between truth and myth. Can a master of deception ever truly be trusted? Frank Abagnale's life forces us to question the nature of identity and redemption. In the end, can anyone ever really leave their past behind?